So, at this very fascinating point in my life, I am learning to have like a reboot on my approach to not only myself, but my relationships as well. It's fascinating, it really is. I like to look at it and see that things are changing in a way that I didn't previously see, right? Like, it's fascinating how much we want other people. This isn't for everyone, right? This is kind of just like, for some people, depending on where you are and how it is that you've approached yourself and other people in life, right? But for the longest time in life, I kind of like placed the responsibility on other people to validate me, to approve of me, to fill my own insecurities, right? That is a lot of responsibility, for starters. Secondly, it's not healthy. It's not an accurate way of approaching relationships in a healthy way. It's not, right? And so, like, I'm learning that, I mean, what I've learned recently that I think is very fascinating is that in childhood, the way that things are supposed to go in a healthy way is that the parent takes on the responsibility of validating and approving and loving the child, right? Essentially nourishing the hell out of the child. That's just the way that the parent goes about things, right? And there's supposed to be a transition very early on in childhood around, like, I don't know, 5 to 7 years of age, maybe even earlier, where, it goes from the parent doing all that stuff, taking on all that responsibility of validating, approving, loving, to then the parent passing that on to the child. Okay, like, now it's your turn to do what I've done for you so that you're going to learn that your worth and your value is intrinsic, right? Now, when that doesn't happen, and a whole bunch of other shit does happen that does not need to happen. It's wild when it's great when a child gets what it needs. It really is. It's fantastic. It's wild when a child not only doesn't get what it needs, but it gets what it doesn't needs. What it doesn't need, right? That's a really wild kind of process, right? Like, it's like not only is the child not getting what it needs, but it's getting what it doesn't need. It's kind of scary that that actually is what happens. Like, it's so easy for a child to be distracted from themselves and also from what it is that they need because maybe they're dealing with caretakers or caregivers that are just not there, right? In many different ways, right? So not only are you not getting what you need, but you're also getting what you don't need and what you'll realize probably later on in life you really didn't want, right? And that's a challenge. It's a massive challenge. But it's just so fascinating to me how when we don't learn to validate ourselves, to approve of ourselves, to fulfill our own sense of self worth, and understand that that's a real intrinsic game because it is. Um, Worthiness as an individual is an intrinsic game. And I've learned recently in a professional setting that um, seeking validation and approval in adulthood is actually not healthy. It's really not, and that's so fascinating because, like, many of us never learned to give ourselves that validation and approval and to allow ourselves to feel worthy without seeking it externally, right? We didn't get that, and so therefore, hey, do you have my answer? Hey, do you have my answer? Hey, do you have my answer? I really hope that you have what I need. I really hope that you have what I need. Please validate me. Please approve of me. Please validate me. Please approve of me. Don't need it. right? And now the challenging thing is for those that didn't get that, the endeavor of actually taking that on might be challenging because like you are so used to looking outside of yourself for that. You're so used to externalizing your sense of self-worth, right? You're so used to externalizing the validation and the approval that you so passionately crave, right? You think that that person has the answer and that person has the answer, right? And if you were to look at yourself and be like, well, so I need to validate and approve of myself. How the fuck do I do that? Right? And then it becomes a game of like, well, this just doesn't make sense. I've externalized this my entire life. There's no way that I can finally approve of this seemingly empty fucking vessel. There's nothing in here. I've been treated like shit. If anything, there's shit in here. Am I supposed to validate shit? Fuck. You know? And then it's just like, it's fascinating. Like when you wake up to the realization that you've been treated like complete fucking garbage by people, right? Used, discarded, lied to, cheated on, treated like shit, this, that, and the other. It's kind of scary to look at yourself, right? To look at your internal world and to be like, but there's nothing good in here. How am I supposed to validate myself? How am I supposed to prove myself? How am I supposed to see myself as worthy, right? And sure, I get it. I do. It's hard to look at that stuff. I would argue that it's a little bit easier to look at it when you realize that everything you've been carrying is much more of other people's shit, right? Projections from other people, projections, displacements, everyone else's defense mechanisms, fucking machine gunned at you and everything. Sorry for the shaky camera. But like, have you been treated like shit? There's a really good fucking chance that you have. And you can validate that for yourself. And I will even validate you because I know that many people that watch these videos have been treated poorly, right? They've had fucked up, dysfunctional, unhealthy dynamics in relationships with families, this, that, and the other. That's the reality of it, right? So you might be looking at yourself, you might be trying to understand how you are worthy, and with that, you might also be looking into yourself and being like, but I'm just full of shit. Like I've gotten nothing but shit from other people. How on earth am I worthy of being validated and approved of and loved, especially by myself, especially when I'm the person who has consistently put myself in these situations with people, in these relationships with people over and over and over again. How on earth am I worthy of goodness, of seeing myself in a positive light? How? Right? Now, this video is not really about that. It's more so about realizing that relationships can drastically transform depending on how you approach them and not putting this massive responsibility on another person to validate and approve of you because you don't need to. It's unhealthy in adulthood, right? Um, Seeing yourself as worthy takes work. It really does. It takes diving into yourself. It takes recognizing that you've been treated like shit, probably because you learned that as a dynamic very early on in life, and you've just been repeating a pattern of putting yourself in the same position with somebody who stabs you in the motherfucking heart. And that's just the way that it is, right? Oh, there you are again. Right? Just the same thing over and over again. Oh, there you are again. It feels so familiar. It feels so familiar. I can't stop doing it. I can't stop doing it. Well, you can. You just have to learn that you don't deserve to be treated that way, which requires you to look really fucking deeply inside of yourself and understand that once you stop relying on other people, the external world, to validate you, to fulfill your sense of self worth, to approve of you, to give you that stamp of approval. I give you that stamp of approval. Once you realize that you don't have to do that, which it does take work, it does take a lot of like looking at yourself and being like, oh, huh, okay, right? But then once you take your power back on yourself You stop relying on the external world, because really, honestly, I'm not going to say that it's an illusion, but once you switch the game around, once you do it the other way around instead, it changes everything. It really does. Like, I'm learning to validate and approve of myself and to just like love myself. And I'm realizing, like, oh wow. I mean, this is challenging and it's difficult and it still goes against many beliefs that I carry, but I understand. I understand that that person does not have the answer to my validation and approval. That person does not have the answer to my validation and approval. Oh, take the power back on myself and start doing it for myself. That's the difference in game here. Um, but like, imagine going to somebody. We a lot of us do this unconsciously or subconsciously. Imagine going to somebody and being like, validate me, approve of me. This is the debt that you now have to pay. Yeah, no thanks. I don't think any. I mean, personally, now that I realize it, like I used to approach that stuff. I used to look at that stuff and be like, yeah, of course I'll validate you. I'll approve of you. You're so good. You're so worthy. You're so beautiful. You're so wonderful. You're so love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. You're good enough. This, that, and the other. Um, that's a massive distraction for me. Finding people that are already worthy. I mean, it's not the people that are already worthy. Finding people that see their own self worth and they don't externalize it and they don't place it on other objects to fulfill other objects, meaning people, of course. That's the goal here, right? There, I know that it might sound crazy and it might be hard to see or believe for many people, but there's actually nothing stopping you. There might be a bunch of beliefs and everything, a bunch of ideas about who you are and the absolute worthless piece of shit that you are, and this idea and belief that your goodness resides in other people and they have to give it to you. It's a fucking illusion. It really is. It's a very real illusion. It seems real. It seems like that's the way that it's supposed to be, but it's not. It's not. We can all validate ourselves. We can all stop externalizing our own sense of self worth and bring the power back on ourselves and stop seeking it externally. You don't need permission to do a goddamn motherfucking thing in life. You don't. There's a good chance that you're an adult, you're a full grown adult. You don't have to ask anybody permission. You don't need anybody's validation or approval to do anything in life. And you don't need that to love yourself either, to approve of yourself, to validate yourself. Every fucked up idea that you have about yourself came from somebody else.